church. He loved the people in the church. He loved to preach. He loved to read and study. He was just a voracious reader. He just loved his ministry. And so I grew up with a man who loved everything he did, and yet he never put any pressure on me, because he always felt that only the Lord can do that, and he didn't want to cloud my thinking because I had such great respect for him. I think he backed far away from that. But the time came in my life through a car accident when I was 18. I got thrown out of a car and went about 120 yards down the middle of the highway and survived 3 months in bed. That was the time when the Lord really got a hold of my heart. But He never put pressure on me. But once I committed to that, then I became His personal project. And then He got serious.
Do you remember the conversation you had when you told Him you felt called to gospel ministry?
Well, I don't remember the exact conversation, but somewhere around there, He gave me a Bible. And He just wrote in it, "Dear Johnny, preach the word. Love, Dad." He just wanted to say one thing to me, and that was what He wanted to say. Preach the word. And we had that conversation about 2 Timothy 4, about preaching it all the way to the end and being faithful to the end, because that's how his father was, and that's the goal that he wanted for his own life. But then I was basically a football player, jock in my high school days and even in college, and he dragged me off to seminary. And he said, you got to go to seminary. You got to get serious and go to seminary, and you need to go to Talbot Seminary because there's this guy there named Charles Feinberg. You remember the name? Who was brilliant, studied 14 years to be a rabbi and was converted to Christ. 2 earned doctorates, went to Dallas Seminary, got his THD, and president of Dallas was Chafer in those days, and he said he was the only graduate they ever had who knew more when he got there than he did when he left. So I'm not sure, I don't know what he meant by that, but that they had a negative effect on the poor guy. And so he left there and went to Johns Hopkins and did a PhD under William Foxwell Albright, who was a great Middle Eastern archaeologist, and he knew all kinds of languages. And so my dad had worked a deal with Feinberg to take me on as a personal project while I was in seminary, which he did. And he gave me books, and this is a quick story. He called me into his office periodically in honor of my dad. I know he didn't tell me he was doing it because of my dad, but I know my dad was behind the scenes trying to shift my mental focus. And he would give me books to read, and he would have conversations with me, and even was in his home. I became a good friend with his son Paul, another good friend with his son John, and we spent a lot of time together. I had to preach my first year in seminary, and in chapel before the whole student body, and he chose the text, and he gave me 2 Samuel 7, the great Davidic promise. And, I preached on presuming on God. Nathan said, go build it, and God said, Nathan, I don't want him to do it, he's a man of blood, and so forth. And I preached on presuming God, which was like a massive missing of the point. Because the point was the Davidic covenant, not presuming on God. That was trivial. So...
And he pointed that out.
When I finished, he gave me a sheet, and he wrote in red, "You missed the entire point of the passage. See me in my office." And I went into the office, and I'm telling you, he shredded me as only he could. And, that was the greatest lesson I ever learned. It really was. To get the point of the passage is it's all we're asking out of you. That's all we're asking. We don't want your creativity. Just get the point of the passage. So when he went to be with the Lord some years ago, his family called and asked if I would speak at the funeral. So I guess somewhere along the line, he told somebody that he thought I was getting the point of the passage. They felt free to ask me to speak.
John, do you remember the time when you wrote a letter to your father telling him about your decision to go into pastoral ministry? Is that right?
My dad never, in my memory, urged me to be a pastor. In fact, when I chose to leave teaching in 1979 and head to the pastorate. He wrote a page and a half to dissuade me, because after being in 1,000 churches, he was afraid for me. He just said, you have found your niche. I wanted to name you Peter, but your mother wouldn't let me name you Peter Piper. We named you John, and that's who you are. You're the quiet, reflective type. You're not the proclaimer, and so you belong in the classroom. So stay there, because you're going to be eaten alive in the church. That was the letter, and I couldn't resist the call. And when I said, Daddy, I think I'm going to do this anyway, he said, good. I just wanted to make sure. that was the approach that he took. He took that exact same approach when we were about to adopt a little girl when I was 50 years old. I said, I'm going to adopt a little girl. He wrote me a page and a half letter. That's the stupidest thing you ever did in your life. You're 50 years old. The kids are gone. What in the world are you doing? And we couldn't shake that either. And after that was done, he said, she's beautiful. I love this little girl. So my dad, I guess, has a different way of encouraging in ministry. He really thought I had found my niche, and I think he was wrong about that.
Did your dad get to hear you preach a lot? A little?
Not a lot, but some.
Yeah.
Yeah, not much.
You were 34 when you came to Bethlehem,
That's right.
and you were 30?
29?
29. So if you could go back now and talk to the 34-year-old John Piper, the 29-year-old John Macarthur, knowing what you know now, what do you think would be the most important thing to tell you on the front end of your ministries?
Well, it's clear to me that the most important things would have to do with my children and my wife, and not the church. I don't think I would do anything basically differently at Bethlehem. If I thought real hard about it, I might think of some tactical changes, but I think we work out of a pastoral model that's so simple, it's hard to change it. You know, it's just you open the Bible and you tell people what it means with all your heart, and try to live it out before the people, and figure out the other stuff as you go along. But the family, I could do better. I could really do better as a dad, I think, if I started over again. Nobody was talking in terms of shepherding a child's heart in those days. You know, it's a book title. If y'all don't know that title, I don't think I did very good at that. In fact, giving an illustration of I got an email from Nathan down there today. In it, you quoted Rick Gamache, who's pastor of a Sovereign Grace Church here in town. And Rick had done my class for me last Thursday and had told these guys about questions that he asks his children to draw out their heart. And I read those 10 questions or so. I copied them down. I sent them to all 4 of my sons. They've all got kids, and I don't want them to do as poorly as I did. I think I was faithful to my kids. I went to all the soccer games. I tucked them in at night. I set an example for them. I had devotions every night, but I rarely drew out their affectional life at age, say, 13, 14, 15. And that has not set them up to be as effective, I think, in their lives as they might have been. So I would go to the John Piper at age 34, I think, and I would say, do better at supplementing your truth commitments with drawing out your wife's heart and drawing out your child's heart, so that they find ways to express what's in here, not just what's in here. And I think I was naive about that, because all that stuff sort of comes naturally for me. I mean, I'm an emotional guy. Easy for me to express emotions, positive, negative. I'm all over the map. But